Hi, my name is Archie, and I'm the Careers Advisor for Psychology, Education and Life Sciences. And today we're going to take a look at CVs and how to make your CV as competitive as possible. So let me just start with the purpose of a CV. It's obviously to market yourself to employers. It's your own marketing document. You use a CV to apply for advertised jobs, and also if you're sending out a speculative application as well. In the CV, whatever structure you're using, you need to list your education and your work experience background, your career history, and throughout the CV, you're demonstrating your relevant experience. At each point in the CV, you're making a link between you and what you offer and the job description and the person's specification that you're targeting. And throughout the CV, you are selling your skills and your attributes and any achievements that you have been able to attain so far. And you're using it as a marketing document to get you through to the next stage of the selection and recruitment process, and that is often to obtain an interview. And let me just go through a typical CV content. So always you'd start with your name. You would make yourself as contactable as possible, a landline, a mobile number, email address, and you then have the option of creating a personal profile. And if you're going to do that, then you need to do a short, succinct 2 or 3 line statement about just a few key strengths that you offer to the employer and the type of job you're looking for. So the personal profile needs to be customized, and it is a quick way of customizing the first part of your CV. Then, because you are currently in higher education or you've recently been in higher education, you would usually start with an education section, and you need to ensure that you don't undersell your educational background. So you need to make the course content and project details relevant. It may be a good idea to put in your dissertation title, and you need to say what the skills are that you have gained directly from your higher education experience. And again, you're making links between that and the job that you're targeting. And then while you're still on page 1, it's usually a good idea to start on a work experience and employment section and using some kind of reverse chronology, either a simple reverse chronology or different chronologies by using subheadings. And we'll take a look at that in a moment. Then the reader's going to turn the page, look at the top of page 2, and usually, given that you've had a number of jobs so far, you would continue with the employment section down to maybe a third of the way or half of the way down page 2. And then in the UK at the moment, it's certainly a good idea to list your additional skills, any very measurable skills that you have. So that would typically be language proficiencies, IT proficiencies, and then also any other interests and achievements. And I would suggest you keep these highly relevant to the job, but it is a good idea to make yourself competitive, to stand out by talking about any additional achievements that you've attained. So student societies, being a class rep, a brand ambassador on campus, or any team sports that you've been involved in. And then at the foot of page 2, you need to at least say references available on request. If you still have space, it's often a good idea to list 2 references, typically an academic reference and an employment reference. So this is a typical UK style graduate CV. Candidate is Julia, and you can see at a glance that it's very well laid out. There's good formatting. The formatting is consistent. The font size makes the CV readable. There are no really dense paragraphs. It's easy for the reader to skim read in 30 or 40 seconds and pick up the key points. Julia started to use bold headings and subheadings at the start, so she has to continue to do that right through the CV. She has to use language that's consistent throughout the CV, and you can see that it's well laid out and it's easy for the reader to get through that document. So let me give you some guidelines for an effective CV. I would suggest that when you send it, you always attach a covering letter or an email message as an introduction to the CV, and that will encourage the reader to spend more time on the CV than he or she might otherwise do. Have a look at our website for advice and guidance on cover letter construction. Also, unless you're doing an academic CV, you would be looking at a maximum of 2 sides of A4 for the document. As we saw with Julia's example, you need to divide it into clear sections and use appropriate headings throughout. List the most recent and relevant experience first. As we saw with Julia, however, she opted out of that to some extent with work experience because she subheaded financial experience on page 1. She had a listing of finance-related jobs there, and then she, as a second priority on page 2, she had additional commercial and casual work experience and a reverse chronology under that. So one of the key things about a CV is that you need to make sure that you prioritize things correctly. And basically on page 1 of the document, you need to have your most relevant work experience and your educational background. That would typically be the right structure to go with. You need to target the CV towards a type of job or career. You need to customize it carefully. So if you are applying for jobs in different sectors in the graduate labour market, you would at least need to have a version of your CV designed for each of those sectors. And then within each sector, you would still need to further customize that CV by tweaking some of the skills messages and some of the content according to what that particular employer was looking for. Also, you need to check spelling and grammar for accuracy by using an electronic spell checker, but also using another human being, preferably a native English speaker, who can just pick up some of the minor linguistic things that an electronic spell checker is not going to pick up. Just maybe things like tenses and maybe slight things to do with the word order, just so that your CV flows and has maximum impact. If you go to the CV section of our website, you'll see that we have a number of structures of CV that we illustrate. A skills-based CV is another potential way to go in the UK, but usually employers in the UK are looking for a reverse chronology CV or a skills-based CV. Those would be the 2 main formats that UK employers recognise. So take a look at both of those. Also, just to give you 1 or 2 resources to help you make your CV as competitive as possible, why not have a look at our blog site at gucareers.wordpress.com. I did a blog posting at the start of the year called Writing Your Way to Success. Have a look at that. And also, if you're a current student at the University of Glasgow, I'd strongly recommend you have a look at our Writing for Employability Moodle site, which has interactive exercises just to improve the quality and impact of what you're writing, whether it's a CV or an application form that's designed by the employer. So it goes into things like CV tone and verb tenses and just gives you some help as to how to structure your answers on an application form and the actual content of a CV. Choice of language as well, using power words, active words, just to help create a good impression with the employer. And there's much more on that Moodle site as well. So I wish you all the best with designing your CV and targeting the jobs that you really want. And thank you for watching.